So, if my name's Daniel Bennett, I'm from DNA Business Development. I work with ambitious businesses in the agricultural sector, helping them become more profitable by finding and securing the right customers for them. And I'm based in Cheshire. I work from, at the moment, Aberdeen down to Hampshire. It's a long way, isn't it? And following on from a fortnight ago, when we had the power of storytelling, there was a realization that the subject requires more than one session. Hence, we are back here today for part two. And Sandy has very kindly returned to share his experience and thoughts with his more forthright perspective on marketing that many others hold. Yeah, so following on from a fortnight ago, yeah, so we're on to part two, and we're going to continue to explore. And how do we engage farmers with compelling agri-tech narratives? I mean, our goal today is to discuss how storytelling can help you build and engage your audience to expand and boost your business. Now, look, this is an interactive session. I've called it a mastermind because I like people to, tell me what they're doing and they've got advice. Hey, I don't like to call myself an expert. I like to call myself a specialist. A implies that I know everything. I definitely don't. Whereas a specialist implies that I've got an area of knowledge, but I'm also constantly learning. So I'd like to do some round the room intros. If you've got your camera off, great. Let's get your camera on if you're happy to. So let's start with Sandy. Who the heck are you and what you're doing here?
Yes, I think most people have heard my opening gambit. I'm Sandy. I run a sort of marketing consultant and consultancy called Farmstock, in where I do content creation for both for myself and for other people, help with marketing strategy, and ultimately my goal is to get you and your brand and your company to stand out and actually get noticed. And that sounds like quite an obvious thing that you would offer when it comes to marketing, but you'd be amazed at how many brands just don't stand out and get noticed. Far too many of them are playing it too safe. Far too many of them are bland, and so much of their marketing message just falls into the ether and gets lost, and it does nothing for them. So, as I say, as Dan said, I have a slightly more alternative take on marketing, and as I say, that is entirely designed to get brands, companies, and products seen and discovered by their audience. So yeah, that's me.
And we're going to hear more from Sandy. He's got lots to share with us. So I'm just going to put Robert. Who in the heck are you and where are you from?
I'm Rob. I work for AgCo. I look after Africa, and I'm on the brand side. So I really love the storytelling side of things. So yeah, very excited to be here.
Great, thanks, Rob. James.
Hi, James Siggs, based in Devon. We are farm business consultants. We were doing a lot of international work, and now we're just focused on the UK, covering the whole of the West Country.
Fantastic. Nice to meet you, James. Jeff.
Hi. Hi, it's Jeff. Yes. So, okay. So basically I wear two hats. One hat is a business consultant, been around the CEA market, vertical farming, for about 7 years, and help companies develop vertical farming solutions in terms of growing various different things like that around the world, and also specialize in, my background is finance and funding. Okay, and then on the other side of things, I represent a global manufacturer of vertical farming equipment called GrowSpec, and you can probably see from the picture there that's one of our small systems, but we manufacture in China, in our factory in China. We've got a UK operation, and we cover Europe, Middle East, and that. So we make and manufacture solutions for vertical farming.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Good to see you. Barry, are you able to tell us who you are and where you're from?
Hi, I'm Barry Winsbury. Basically, I'm a designer of hydroponic equipment. I've invented a new method for cultivation, which I call nutrient trickling technique, and I've built a machine to cultivate cannabis, which will give, which will give a perpetual harvesting scenario for any of those who are interested.
Brilliant. Well, good to meet you, Barry. David, can you quickly tell us who you are?
Yeah, my name is Dave Franciosi. I am marketing chap for MacDon Europe. And then I also have my other business, which is farming photography. And if my signal drops in and out, I am currently sat on a hillside in Denmark.
Oh, right. Well,
So,
yeah, good.
signal's not very good.
No problem. Thanks, David. Tom, who are you?
Yeah, morning all. Yeah, good to be back at one of these. Yeah, I'm marketing manager for an Agri-Tech sustainability company called Map of Ag. My background, I'm very much sort of a holistic marketer, been a sole marketer in farming inputs for the last 10 years or so. So yeah, keen to learn more and hear everyone's perspectives.
Thanks, Tom. And Will.
Yeah, sorry, Will Dunn here from the AgDrive app, based in North Yorkshire. Pretty much AgDrive is an app for agricultural contractors and farmers to eliminate the paperwork and link into common accounting software.
Great, thanks, Will. Good to see you here. Anthony, what are you doing here? Just tell us who you are.
Anthony Pierce, director of Dudley Peveril. We associates we help farmers diversify. Thanks,
Anthony. Good to see you here. So Farrukh actually works with me. He works in the background putting these things together. Really good chap. If you want to know more about how we work, so Farrukh's actually based in Nigeria, then that's a different conversation. But yeah, it works really well. And Rebecca, I don't know if you've just joined. Are you able to say hello? If not, don't worry. But okay, right. So welcome and welcome. You're here today to solve a problem, and that might be a specific challenge you're facing or to enhance your learning and understanding. Today, I'm going to show you some of what I do to help grow agri-tech businesses by blending marketing and sales activity to find and secure farming customers for them. And if that's something you'd like help with, I can explain a little bit later, how we can perhaps work together. So many facets to finding and securing customers. And today we're going to focus on the power of storytelling to engage farmers with compelling agri-tech narratives. So this morning, facts tell, stories tell. So if you were here 2 weeks ago, you'd remember me saying, what books do you remember from your childhood? And this is the one I've got, What Do People Do All Day by Richard Scarry. I don't know if anybody remembers this book, but actually in here, he talks about farmers. And can you see they even have the same weather problems that we've got now with flooded fields and things rolling around in boats. I just found it really compelling and highly memorable. Richard Scarry, he uses text to get that story over. And looking at the book this morning, it dawned on me that the impact of words and pictures has not changed. In an age where social media is the main form of communication, which started as words only, who remembers Friends Reunited? Show your age. We now blend words, images, and video. And going back to even before printing was invented and everything had to be hand-scribed, comes the story of St. Swithin. Hopefully most of you will know the folklore surrounding St. Swithin. It invariably gets talked about every year in farming circles running up to the 15th of July, especially this year as it's seemingly not stopped raining since last August. St. Swithin was the Bishop of Winchester from 852 to 862 AD. On his request, rather than being buried in Winchester Cathedral, he was buried in a simple tomb in the graveyard where the sweet rain of heaven may fall upon his grace. However, on the 15th of July, 1971, his body was moved inside the cathedral, and a huge storm hit, and it supposedly rained for 40 days after. So legend suggests that the spirit of St. Swithin was so outraged at being moved that he's been responsible for this weather. So the folklore therefore suggests, St. Swithin's Day, if it does rain, for 40 days it will remain. St. Swithin's Day, if it be fair, for 40 days, it will rain no more. And so the story of St. Swithin remains with us, despite him dying 1162 years ago. So I don't know what happened where you are, but it pissed down here on Monday afternoon. So maybe we're going to get 40 days rain. Fortunately, there's no scientific evidence that folklore is accurate. There, in fact, has never been a record of 40 dry or 40 wet days following St. Swithin's Day. The closest we've got in modern record was in Castile Island, which once experienced rain on St. Swithin's Day and the following 34 days. People will forget what you say, people will forget what you do, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And that's what stories do. They make you feel. It's the emotions that resonate and remain with us. So in terms of the whole concept behind this is to share ideas, be creative, explore what worked and what not worked for ourselves. It's definitely an interactive session. Please join in, chip in. Assuming no one's still in their pajamas, great if you've got your cameras on. It's informal, no PowerPoint, no death by PowerPoint here. In the group, we have a wide range of marketing, agriculture experience and knowledge. We're all students and we're all teachers. And you could argue the true test of learning something is being able to teach it to others. So I hope you'll help each other. It's possible you might perceive have a competitor in the room. To me, how much more powerful is collaboration than competition? And in fact, I guess Sandy and I could be competition, but we seem quite happy helping each other out. So we introduce a different topic each fortnight, and we have a short talk about it. Then we're going to open the floor to everyone to share their thoughts or perhaps a challenge you're facing. If you've been here before, you know I have a habit of picking on people, so be ready. I do believe in keeping to time, so we will be finished at 10:45. I know we've all got busy diaries. I will hang around at the end afterwards if anybody wants to carry on, but please at 10:45, no embarrassment. Go if you wish. You might wonder what gives me the right to talk about sales and marketing, growing businesses in the ag sector. I mean, I wanted to be as a farmer, 9 years old. I fell in love with farming, did the ag college thing, drove big green tractors with yellow wheels, but then persuaded by my graphic design fiance that farming wasn't going to provide the lifestyle expected of me. We set up a design and marketing business in 1990, and go figure, very quickly learned how to learn about sales and marketing, growing a business. Fortunately, she decided to not be married to me any longer in 2016. I realized I could go and live my dream again, so I went to work on a farm in the Isle of Man. Then I went to New Zealand as a spraying contractor. When I returned, knowing how cold and wet it here is in the UK, I realized that my time was better spent helping agricultural businesses based on my business experience. So today, the power of storytelling, engaging farmers with compelling AgriTech narratives. Fortunately, we have one of the best storytellers in agricultural marketing with us today, Sandy Kirkpatrick from Farmstock. And in his own words, he does agricultural marketing for brands that want to stand the fuck out. That's me. I don't use rude words like that. I think Sandy and I originally connected in 2020, and I like to think our sense of humor aligned, as well as hosting the Farmers Weekly podcast. Sandy has been kept really busy this year with a serials event for which you've almost become the face of the event, certainly on the social media channels. And I'm very, very quickly just going to share a brief clip of Sandy's work, so I'm not going to share because somebody's nicked my host. I think so. Sandy, a few questions for you. And again, if anybody wants to ask Sandy a question, click the button on your Zoom screen, wave your hand, and we'll bring you in as soon as possible. Or you can wait until the end and when we talk. So Sandy, we started this a fortnight ago, and we got, I think we had about 20 questions, and I think we got to question 2. So very, very briefly, I'm just going to ask you a little bit, just so that, because we've got a different audience, tell us a bit about your background and your journey to become a great storyteller in agriculture.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I spent the first 25 years of my life growing up on our beef sheep, or what used to be our beef sheep and dairy farm in southwest Scotland. About 12 years ago, my dad sold the dairy because the price of milk was absolutely terrible. And since then, and the nature of the farm, we've moved more into the sort of environmental and rural side of things. So it's predominantly livestock that I was sort of involved with as a child. So I then, when I met my wife's from down this neck of the woods. I currently live in Windsor. She's from this part of the country. When we got married, I moved down here and then spent around about 10 years cutting my teeth on sales and marketing in the drinks industry in London, which was fascinating. It was brilliant. A really, really exciting time at the sort of rise of craft beer and all the rest of it. But when you strip the drinks industry down into its very core, it's just a battle of brand and distribution. That's it. You try and tell me the difference between, or functionally or taste-wise, the difference between Absolute vodka and Grey Goose vodka, and you can't. It tastes virtually the same. But what differentiates them is the brand. So that's kind of where I learned, and as I say, cut my teeth on brand and marketing. And then come full circle, 10 years later, I left that industry to get back into agriculture, to be more involved with the family farm at home as we move through our sort of succession. planning, as it were, with my parents and my siblings, and that's when I started Farmstock, to try and apply some of what I'd learned elsewhere and some of my alternative takes on marketing into the agricultural industry, which I think is a brilliant industry, but is in dire need of some proper marketing and branding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we come from the same place, don't we? Maybe a slightly different approach, but so does storytelling have a role in modern agricultural marketing?
Yeah, of course it does. And I think I started this. So I should say I'm very aware that I did do a lot of talking last time. So if anyone
Well,
else,
that's the idea. That's why I invited you here, Andy.
no, I appreciate that. I think I'm fully aware that I certainly don't know everything, and well, far from it. So I appreciate there's a lot of very clever minds in the room also. So if anyone else wants to pipe up and put their 2 pence worth in, then please do. Yeah, I think I started out. I think we started out last time by saying that, you know, if you're in the brand building game, you're in the storytelling game. And that for me is as simple as it is. I think people get very caught up and hung up on, you know, consumer demographics and, you know, in agriculture and every other industry as well, target markets and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, farmers are just people, you know, and until the robots take over, we are creatures of emotion. We're drawn to stories, we're drawn to brands in an emotive way, and I think it is absolutely fundamental in furthering the industry and furthering the companies and the brands that are within the industry and the industry as a whole. I think marketing's one thing, but brand is something very different, but they're intrinsically aligned. I think a lot of people get brand not very wrong, but people get very confused over what brand is. People think that a brand is a logo or a sort of website or stuff like that, but that's just the tip of an iceberg. That's brand identity. And the best analogy that I've ever heard when it comes to what is a brand is that brands are like people. They're the business equivalent of people. And your brand identity, so your website, your logo, your branding in inverted commas, that's what you wear. That's the clothes that you wear on the outside. But your brand is who you are as a person on the inside. And as humans, we are naturally drawn to find out more about that person on the inside. Dan told his story, you know, in the first 5 minutes this morning about his sort of progress and how he got to where he is. And I did roughly the same in a condensed 2 minutes. But that's what people want to wear. With the best will in the world, you don't give a shit whether I wear a purple crew polo shirt this morning. You want to know about me as a person. And that's exactly the same with brand. And that's very much emotive driven. And that's where your storytelling piece comes in. And that's what makes them so powerful. So yeah, storytelling is absolutely fundamental.
Sorry, you talk about clothing. You have become sort of synonymous with the infamous pink trousers. Actually, I've got a clip. I would love to show you one of Sandy's short videos for It's about 1.5 minutes long. Let me just see if I can put that up, because it actually really aligns with, does storytelling have a role in agricultural marketing? And I think this probably answers it for us. So let me see if I can do this, and hopefully you can all hear and see. Can you hear it?
Really is getting out of control these days. Certainly the worst I've ever seen. Agronomists, they call themselves, but trust me, it's just gang warfare out there. Everyone's fighting for territory. There's new varieties coming out all the time, and the gangs are trying to control the supply routes. I had a KWS sales rep attacked in broad daylight, ripped a leg off his sonnies, stole his shuffle gilet. Oh, it's disgusting. These guys will stop at nothing. The Lincolnshire SWAT team confiscated this the other week. That's half a kilo of X-Days. That's got a street value of anywhere north of £7. That's got one of the highest disease resistances in the market at the minute. God knows what would happen if that got into the wrong hands. You could end up with a roundabout full of winter wheat in the middle of Bishop Stortford if you're not careful. I mean, it's dangerous stuff. But they have their unofficial AGM at cereals in June. We'll have our eyes on them. They all rock up in their Range Rovers, but we'll be there. I've got them covered. All we need is one mistake, one lost business card, one dropped burner phone. Resources have been stretched, but we'll get them. I'm confident of that.
I'm always nervous of which one's going to pop up, if I'm honest, Dan.
I like to keep you guessing. Keep you guessing.
It's quite uneasy listening, watching yourself back. If I'm honest,
I know it is.
I never particularly.
I'd like to make it excruciating for you. How many films was there? 6, 8, something like that.
I think there was. Well, there was. I think it was about 15 in total, but four we did. I say professionally, but a mate of mine who is he really is a cinematographer, to be fair. He's very, very good behind the lens, and I got him to do 4 of them, and that the drug dealer one was one of the ones he did. So
obviously check out Sandy's if you go to Sandy's LinkedIn profile, I think they're all there, aren't they? If you want to see his other work. So I mean, in terms of, you know, to me, you've sort of spun a story there. It's a great story. Maybe just to explain a little bit about the brief behind that. So Ali McIntyre, event director for Cereals, she what was the brief and what did you promise to deliver?
That was what Ali said to me. I met her at Llama this year in January, and she said the big problem, because obviously agronomy forms probably about a third of cereals. You've got the agronomy, you've got, you know, so what goes in the ground, you've then got the kit in terms of what actually gets out the ground, and then you've got your chemicals and sprays and sprayers in terms to treat the crops. And so agronomy, you know, it comprises probably about a third of the event. And she said, how do I make this interesting? You know, because to a lot of people, but to a lot, even farmers, it's particularly boring. It's really, really dull. So she said, I just want to try and make it interesting. And as I say, it came about, I think I explained this last time, it came about as a bit of a mistake, because I thought KWS, who are one of the big plant breeders, had a variety called Ecstasy, but it wasn't. It was actually KWS X Days. And so I planned it and wrote it and did it, and then we needed some props, and I spoke to a mate who works at KWS, and I said, can you get me half a kilo of Ecstasy? And he's like, well, I'm good, but I'm not that good. And he said, well, it's actually X Days. And so I realized the cock up that I'd made, but we thought, well, let's just run with it, and it seemed to work. But yeah, that was the brief, and I think it's about, thinking outside the box is one of these really wanky terms, but it was doing something a little bit different to try and bring it across in a more engaging way.
Yeah, really. And how do you know, farmers can be quite skeptical, can't they? You know, how can we engage farmers, particularly those skeptical ones? I mean, you know, they moan, don't they? How do we move them from a skeptical moaner to sort of a really sort of enthusiastic participant or engaged?
Well, I think again it comes under this brand umbrella, in that it's emotion. I think make them feel something. That video used humor to try and bring across a message or an element of the event, but it could be fear, it could be anger, it could be inspirational. I like to use humor because I think it works across so many different levels and so many different genres. But I think, yeah, connect with people on an emotive level. And as I say, it doesn't matter whether you're an arable farmer, dairy farmer, fruit farmer, pig farmer. We are all just human, and we all like to, you know, to laugh, and we all have those emotions inside of us. And again, if you look out with agriculture and look at other industries, if you look at the best example for storytelling these days, and one of the big problems that we have with social media and with digital marketing is the fact that everyone's attention span is so ridiculously short. You know, it's like 5 seconds before somebody scrolls on to another video, and that's really, really difficult to keep people engaged. But then if you look at a blockbuster Hollywood film, it's the guts of 2 hours, and they've got to keep you engaged for 2 hours. how do they do that? Okay, you can have fancy trickery with cameras and, you know, the technical aspects behind it. But when you look at what keeps people engaged, it's largely built on storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I will happily sit down and watch, you know, a 2.5 hour film if it's a great story and one that I'm really engaged with. And so you can do it. It's not easy, don't get me wrong. And granted, these guys have tens of millions of pounds worth of budget, but I think it's a really compelling, way of keeping people engaged and keeping people interested.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Anthony, do you mind if I just bring you in here a bit? Because we've been having a conversation with Anthony and his colleague Alex. So, in effect, Anthony and Alex provide a professional service. And how do you, Anthony, do you want to share that conversation a little bit about, is it appropriate to use humour? You're quite a humorous guy yourself.
So I think I was interested in Sandy's comment just then about emotions. It's something that we pick up on in one of our documents. We focus on the emotional aspect that the client is struggling with. So we have to deal with some quite tricky emotions. And as Sandy was talking, I was wondering about, could, you know, sadness and could we leverage that a little bit more rather than just relying on humor? I think what Dan is referring to is our issue with professionalism and whether you can use humor in a professional environment. But we very much set our brand positioning is one of being different, and therefore where some of our contemporaries might struggle to use humor and stay professional, it's very much aligned with our brand values. So that brand positioning has enabled us to hopefully use more humor. Good answer. This is where Sandy goes, yeah, but you know, you're very boring in your videos. And I have to agree with it.
Well, no, I don't think so. And I think, as I say, I mean, I use humor with serials or, you know, some of my own content, but that's not right for a lot of people, and it's not right for a lot of brands. And you shouldn't necessarily go down that route just because someone else is doing it. And I think, again, if you look at, you know, coming back to the storytelling piece, big global brands, look at what they're doing, and the most obvious one, and probably the most iconic and well-known one, is the Nike "Just Do It." That's purely a storytelling exercise. Nike don't sell shoes or sports apparel; they sell inspiration, and that's a classic one of inspiration. If you look at Red Bull don't sell the drink; they sell adventure. When you look at Dove's Real Beauty campaign, that isn't humorous in any way. That's it's probably not inspirational. It's more relatable in terms of exactly, Anthony. It's real. So there's a lot of these campaigns don't use humor. Then if you look at, say, the Cadbury advert with the gorilla drummer, I mean, that's so different and really funny. That's one that uses humor. So it doesn't have to be, you know, there's loads and loads of different, you know, there's things about 5 or 6 different human emotions, and you can tap into each one of them. And it doesn't have to be humor. And each one are powerful in their own way. And I think as well, it's not, I think a lot of people, what waters a lot of brands down is that people companies and try and appeal to everybody. And again, the old adage of when you appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody. And I was thinking about this morning, and I'm not going to start on American politics, but when you look at Donald Trump, now I absolutely detest Donald Trump and everything that he stands for, but Donald Trump as a brand is incredibly powerful because he's so polarizing. You either love him or you absolutely detest him. Now, I'm very much in the detest camp, but at the same time, there's 80 odd million Americans who are very much firmly in the in the indoor camp. And so it's a really polarizing brand, and that's what makes them so powerful. And then off the back of that, there's actually a coffee brand in America called Black Rifle Coffee, and they're very much down the line of, it was started by two veterans, in the Rust Belt, white Americans. They're all about guns. They're all about make America great again. It's basically if Donald Trump drank coffee. And again, you'd never find me buying their coffee, but they've done incredibly well because they're a very polarizing brand. And so I think it's a very difficult one to try and get your head around. But as a brand, you shouldn't be trying to please everybody. And
no,
you shouldn't be
I think it's
afraid
very much about identifying who it is that you're trying to target, and then selling a story or a message that appeals to them, and almost on an individual level.
Yeah,
Robert.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Robert, last time, you're working for big brands, and so actually, of course, we've dare I mention JD in this conversation, but that they are a huge brand. You've got your own brand. You're trying to muscle in and do your own thing. You talked about not being quite so serious, I think, last time. When Sandy did cereals and the UK Fenk guys bought into what Sandy was doing, but they were the first corporate to go to say, yeah, we'll give it a go, because the corporates often are so sort of straight-laced and very serious, but actually if you think about your target audience, that they are people. We all sell to people, don't we? So what's your thoughts in terms of how can we, Fendt is emotional. You're either a Fendt camp or in the John Deere camp often, aren't you? Yes. So how do you balance that, considering you run 3 significant brands?
So we run 3 significant brands here in Africa. So it's Fendt, Massey, and Valtra. And the market space in Africa is changing quite a lot. I know your colleague sits in Nigeria. So like South Africa in particular is where I'm based. There's this perception out there that Fendt is so well beyond you, you don't even ask for an inquiry. It's just too advanced, it's too privileged, it's way out there. So what we've had to try and do is tell the story of like, yes, you might drive a green and yellow tractor, but just come and have a look. It's not as bad as what you think it is, and we try to do that approach that way. But because we are so small in Africa, we've had to go very much the emotional road. But we try to include younger people into it, because like my age and up, they're not really in South Africa. When we look at the target, they're not really onto social media and all of that. They say, oh, that's for the younger crowd. And I totally disagree. But when we look at the demographics, it's where they are at. And we have to appeal to them that way. And in AgCo, we're getting a lot of younger guys into the stable, like Ed, who is doing a great job and is taking risks to talk to the people in the way that they want to hear. And using humor has done that, because like Sandy says, 5 seconds is a long time on digital, hey? and you have to convince them, and you have to make it entertaining. They can almost see an advert coming immediately. In a microsecond, they've already gone past you, So that's why we have to make it more human. And yes, humor is nice, but why not tap the other side of the spectrum, sadness, because that will also appeal to people in some way. And then you switch it, So it depends what brand you're playing with. It depends who the audience is. It becomes really tricky, hey? And you have to be careful. You get a lot of backlash as well if you don't do it right.
It's back to this safe route, isn't it? Nobody ever got sacked for buying IBM. That was the old cliche, wasn't it?
But I think if you boil it all down, it's what do you stand for as a brand? Yeah. And I think if you can get that out, you've won the game. And I love what Nike does, aligns with sports personalities. And I think Apple a long time ago aligned with big thinkers, people that are not scared to take risks, the misfits. I don't know what Steve Jobs used in that one video, but it's all about relationships at the end of the day. And I think if we can speak to that more than than a brand, I think it can go a long way. And that's why we use third-party validation in everything we do. A customer saying the equipment's good.
And I heard a rumor that Ollie Harrison, if you know who I mean, received his 2 brand new fence this last week or two because he helped achieve something big in South Africa in selling a number of fence tractors, whether it's true or not. But again, it's the stories, isn't it? You know, so I don't know if you all know who
it was probably, Dan, it was probably a story spread by Fent just to get extra mileage.
I was just going to say exactly that, Anthony, to be honest. Well, I don't know. I'm going off topic here when I start talking about influencers. It's maybe a conversation for behind the scenes.
Well, Fent's busy with the world record at the moment. I'm not going to tell you any details, but we're busy with the world record. Why not? Why not
Absolutely.
do a world record?
Now you're starting to see the story, aren't you? So, you know, you've now got us right. Come on, tell us more. We want to know more. We're waiting to hear. So
there's one thing I wanted to say. There was a video a very long time ago. It's got nothing to do with agriculture. But there was a video of a lady interviewing another lady who was walking around a glitter factory. Glitter, you know, glitter that your kids play with?
Yeah.
And she said in the video, like, who buys this? She says, our biggest customer, and I'm not going to tell you who it is. And that's how she ended the video. It went viral. It was bananas. People wanted to know who was the biggest glitter consumer in the world.
Yeah.
We still don't know.
There was that song.
It's a fascinating story.
The song that says something that you think you're the best person in the room, blah, blah. And she sold the rights to who that she was singing about for $50,000.
Wow.
So it's not a one-off. Leave it hanging.
So actually there's a lesson that actually sometimes less is more. And I think it was Sir Winston Churchill said, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. You know, sometimes we just go on too long, don't we? We sorry, it's not a very nice phrase, but I'm going to use it. We throw up on people, and actually that's, you know, and that's off-putting. So Sandy, I'm really conscious time really romps on these things, but again, I've promised to finish at 1:45. So Sandy, just again, Robert mentioned there social media channels for storytelling. Where can we tell our stories? Where should we tell our stories?
Good question. Tons. Yeah, I think more and more, I think I touched on this last week as well, more and more people, the way that they're discovering, engaging and consuming brands these days is online. That's just it, period. Everyone has a smartphone. And that's the way it's moving. So telling your story online, particularly social media, is growing in importance. The big caveat to all that, and I've said this to a few people in the room as well, is that ads these days don't work. And I think ads, and again, it slightly comes into my thing about influencers as well. When you say commission paid, partnerships paid, all this kind of stuff, that's basically an ad. You're swapping eyeballs for money, and consumers are switching on to that. And so those are becoming harder, and people can just swipe away from an ad. If you want to get people to actually sit and watch your advert or your billboard, go and buy a billboard. Don't put it on social media. So how do you get round the fact that ads aren't working? Well, in my eyes, it's about organic content. It's about doing it yourself, creating compelling, engaging content. And again, it's not about how many followers you have these days. The algorithms have completely changed. It's not about how many followers you've got or the amount of likes or views or anything like that. It's about how good your ideas are. And you see people who, go viral in inverted commas or stack up tens of thousands of views with a couple of hundred followers. It's not about it's not about the size of your audience. It's about how good your ideas are. And again, storytelling ties very firmly into that, but telling compelling stories in an engaging way. So yeah, social media first and foremost, digital. And then there's a ton of other ways you can do it at events. I'm trying to think if anyone else wants to help me out. Just
leaving you hanging there, Sandy.
Just leave me hanging. Well, there is other ways you can do it. I mean, you've got a lot of your traditional routes. You can do it through PR. Again, people say, what's the most powerful medium in the world? And it is, for me, it's been like this since the start of time, and it'll be like this until the robots take over again, is word of mouth. Now, word of mouth back in the day used to be you sitting down the pub talking to someone, and that's the way an idea spread. Nowadays, it happens more online, but it's exactly the same principle. But for word of mouth to actually happen, you need to give people something to remark on. It needs to be good enough to remark. And it's so much more powerful than advertising because it's a trusted source. It's a friend telling a friend rather than, or, as Robert said, a customer telling a customer, or someone who's actually used your product and is genuinely really engaged and excited about it. So word of mouth for me is really, really high up there in terms of powerful, impactful marketing. And that's a really good way of getting your story out as well.
Yeah, Sandy, thank you so much. I'm just sort of so conscious now. I've got about 2 minutes to round things up. So we're leaving people on the precipice again, aren't we? If it's of help, so great to hear about storytelling, how it impacts on people. Facts tell, stories sell. Sorry, I'm full of the old cliches. Sandy, absolutely intriguing. And so these are regular sessions. We run them fortnightly. There's recordings on YouTube, so you can catch up if you miss them. And if anyone wants to have a bit more of a one-on-one chat, I'm happy to offer a complimentary session via Zoom or Teams. We can take a look at your story or any other aspects of your marketing and finding and securing your customers. And I think my calendar link is in the chat box, so you can click on that. Find a slot in my diary that suits you, and let's have a conversation. If you want to be connected up with anybody on the Zoom, drop me a message and I'll check they're happy for me to share contact details, and you can connect up. The next AgriTech Marketing Mastermind is on the 1st of August, 10 a.m. Funny that you should be talking about digital, Sandy. My versus reality, unveiling the power of digital marketing for AgriTech sales. Sandy and I, hey, who's to say who's right and wrong? I've got a slightly different view on some of the digital stuff that Sandy has, but I totally believe in the story bit. So yeah, that brings us to an end, really. Look, it's 10:44. Remember to book a one-to-one call with me if you want to have a deeper conversation about growing your business. Ultimately, as suppliers to the most important industry in the world, farming, we have a responsibility to understand farmers and provide them with workable solutions to help them produce food and run profitable businesses. And to do that, share your stories. Thank you for joining in the AgriTech Marketing Mastermind. I'm going to hang around for a short while afterwards if anyone's got any more questions. Otherwise, it's time to say goodbye. Remember, hope is not a strategy. And goodbye.
I think the only thing I was going to say as well, yeah, people can disappear if they want, but I think in summary, from my point of view, invest in your marketing, invest in your brand.